It is the BISD board is now in session. We didn't have anybody sign up for public comment, and we are going to skip executive session today and go straight into action on 3A.
Yeah, so this time, Mrs. Wilkie, there you are. I was looking to make eye contact with you. If you'd come up, please, and make an introduction to the board.
Good morning, everybody. It is my privilege to recommend Jessica Lewis be an assistant principal at Brenham Junior High. I know many of the faces in this room know who she is. She's a Brenham native, graduated from Brenham High School. She's been in Brenham, Hempstead. She's recently been in Waller and just got her PhD. She finished before me because I don't have my life together. And I will tell you, we really are excited to have her. And I told Mr. Gillentine after our interview that I had several people reach out to me before I even started interviews, like, please interview her. And so that is my recommendation to you guys. They have to vote. Oh, let them vote first.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the recommendation to employ Jessica Lewis as assistant principal at the Brenham Junior High and approve contract recommendations as presented.
Second. Pick one of us. I said it first. No, you did not.
Wait, let them vote.
Okay. Kelvin Raven made a motion, seconded by Kyle Hafner, to accept the superintendent's recommendation to employ Jessica Lewis as assistant principal at Brenham Junior High School and approve contract recommendations as presented. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Welcome to Brenham. Welcome back to Brenham.
That's what I was going to say.
Thank you. I'm super excited to be returning to the community and district that I call home, and I look forward to working with each of you to ensure an exceptional education for all of the students here.
Yeah, so board, if we could get a picture.
Okay, next we're going to consider possible approval of an agreement for the purchase of attendance credits and to delegate contractual authority to the superintendent. Mr. St. Clair.
Good afternoon. Just like we have seen for the last several years, we did this last year about this time, and I remember going back and checking for several years back, I think 10 or 12 years, something like that. This has been a standard operating procedure now for quite some time. Basically, the Texas Education Agency suspects but doesn't really know for sure if we will qualify as having excess local revenue that might need to be sent back to the state. For the last 12 years or so, we've gone through this initial phase and there has been no actual recapture sent back, no actual funds sent back. But because there are a number of things that they don't know right now, in fact, if you notice there in the letter that they sent to us, they kind of listed those out on that last page. They don't know our final enrollment. School hasn't even started yet, so neither do we. They don't know our entitlement or local share of state versus local funding. yet because we haven't even set a tax rate or adopted a budget or any of that yet. They don't know our state certified property values. That won't come out till next spring. They don't know our M&O tax rate. They have given us the maximum compressed rate, but they don't know the exact rate we've adopted yet because we haven't done that. And they certainly don't know how much of our tax collections we've collected because we haven't even started. So there's all these things that are complete unknowns, but they still are required to initially get the conversation started, if you will, by having us submit an intent letter for which one of the 5 options we would choose if we had to do so, if we had to send money back. They do point out that most districts choose option number 3, and that's traditionally the one we've chosen here, which is the purchase of average daily attendance credits. Basically purchasing attendance credits from the state, meaning we would buy them from the state, and that would of course require we would pay TEA for those credits. So this is all just very preliminary for the 25-26 school year, and the only thing that really needs your approval at this point is to authorize the superintendent to negotiate a contract with TEA in the event that would actually happen, and we would actually need to do that. And I would point out also in the letter that TEA sent to us that we are basically prohibited from adopting a tax rate until we get this done and get this information filed with TEA on their website. We have to get this information submitted by September 1 so that we can move forward and adopt a tax rate, which we are planning to do next Tuesday, August the 12th. So as it usually is this time of the year, time is of the essence. So.
Isn't it great that TEA can tell us they don't know much of anything and then turn around and tell us we have to do something based on information they don't know and then dictate exactly what we have to do, which is also controlled by the state as well. So I said it last year, and it's pointless to say it again, but I'd rather just keep the money ourselves and tell them to come fight us for it. But it's a whole other fight, so it's just redundant. It's ridiculous, and I'm glad they're telling us what to do when they don't have all the answers.
Yeah, we do need to take action.
All right, I'll make a motion for the 25-26 school year to delegate the contractual authority to obligate the school district under Texas Education Code 11.1511 to the superintendent solely for the purpose of obligating the district under TEC 48.257 and TEC Chapter 49, subchapters A and D, and the rules adopted by the Commissioner of Education as authorized under TEC 49.006. This included approval of the agreement of purchase attendance credit or the agreement for the purchase of attendance credits, netting Chapter 48 funding.
I second it. Good for you.
Okay, big breath. Okay. Justin Colley made a motion, seconded by Bonnie Brinkmeyer, for the 2025-2026 school year. We delegate contractual authority to obligate the school district under Texas Education Code TEC 11.1511 to the superintendent solely for the purpose of obligating the district under education as authorized under I missed one, sorry. Obligating the district under TEC 48.257 and TEC Chapter 49, subchapters A and D, and the rules adopted by the Commissioner of Education as authorized under 49.006. This includes approval of the agreement for the purchase of attendance credit for the agreement for the purchase of attendance credit, netting Chapter 48 funding. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? The motion passes. That was a mouthful. Okay, and then next we are going to go into our budget workshop.
Yeah, so if I could get the executive leadership team to move up here with us. I mentioned this last time as we were presenting some information that I really wanted to workshop the cabinet and the board together in conversation. We sit in here as an executive leadership team with numbers right up there on that screen. For hours upon hours upon hours, and I really want to bring them in as part of the conversation with you. So there's a lot to absorb. School funding, as you all know, is different than most organizations. Yeah, I told you the other day that you, of course, have three main functions. That's to hire the superintendent, that's to approve the policies that we enforce, and that's to approve the budget. Well, if 80 to 85% of your budget is personnel, then approving the budget most definitely includes the compensation package. That's the majority of the budget. So, you know, the last few years in this district, the compensation package was how can we spend the least amount we can, well, that was our take last year, I should say, as how can we spend the least amount we can spend on personnel, since that is our number one expenditure, and we are looking to cut costs. And we did, right? We did by millions. We absorbed almost 50 positions, most of those being professional, and we cut budgets anywhere and everywhere we thought we could cut. Remember, in the end, this fiscal year that we're living in, we adopted a balanced budget, but in doing that, we didn't put one penny back in our fund balance, and we didn't give one extra penny to our staff. We couldn't. We could not. I mean, we cut everything we cut and only adopted a balanced budget. So most years you want to at least give a cost of living raise to your staff, which is on the average about 3%. We haven't given anything to staff in the last 3 years. 4 years ago, Christy, you told me we gave 5% 4 years ago. Of course, that was not this team that sits around these tables here. That was 5% 4 years ago. Again, we haven't given anything since then. So now that we've got some extra funds from House Bill 2, not near what we would like, obviously. House Bill 2 did not do a lot of things that we obviously hoped it would do. House Bill 2 did do well by teachers. Absolutely did well by teachers. If we can move the scale locally on top of that, this should shake out to be a pretty good year for Brenham ISD teachers. We've also got another staff, though, to keep up with that, again, has not received anything in the last several years. So that's what we're going to look at today, is in your considerations for compensation, which makes up the majority of the budget, how can we tweak that to fit the numbers we want, and that you're given increased compensation to those personnel that we feel like most need it. We've talked extensively in here about how our paraprofessionals are underpaid, and we've shown you that in the districts around us. So how do we really make up for that and get them up in the market where they should be for a like position in a like district close to us? Again, how do we make up for a lack of not even a cost of living raise over the last couple of years? So Daryl, you want to jump in with, I guess, the top sheet that everybody's going to be looking at here? And we're going to workshop through this together. Board, if you'll let, again, we do this behind these doors, hours upon hours, at least a couple of days a week. So if you'll let us kind of work through what you're going to be looking at, and I mean me and the cabinet, and kind of jot your questions down. Now, if we're in a spot where, listen, this is a workshop, we're all a team here. If we're in a spot like, ooh, I really need to ask this question right now, then please do so. Please just say, hey, let's pause right here for a second. But for the most part, if we can let the cabinet sort of work through what you're looking at, and that way you have the full picture, the full scope of things. And then we want to definitely ask all the questions you want to ask. We want to workshop different type ideas. So And of course, we can bring you back next time anything that you would like beyond this. Remember, today there are no decisions to be made. You formally adopt the compensation packet and the budget on the 12th. We've been looking at these numbers now, for a little bit. This is kind of our last time together as a team to work through some different scenarios, give you things to think about before you adopt at the next meeting. Okay, so with that, Daryl, if you'll start us off on page 1, and we'll just kind of work through this together.
Okay. I just handed out updated information from our regular meeting in July. It looks very similar. In fact, if you'll notice that the information at the very top of page 1, going across the top, the funding sources, and then the possibility of additional revenue that may come if a Vader election was approved, that information is exactly the same. That hasn't changed. The information down the left side from there on down on each page is the same that you were given back in July, with one exception. Page 4 is new. Last time you had a 3-page packet total, so everything on page 4 is updated. And then on the right side of the first 3 pages, that's the same basic information that's on the left, but each chart has been updated slightly, and I'll be pointing out what the updates are here as we go through. So again, no changes in the assumption, the revenue assumption across the very top of page 1. That's the same as before. When you look there at the other information there towards the bottom of page 1, there are a few changes there. Before, we were assuming step raises for teachers below step 25. Now we've been talking about looking at the possibility of increasing the teacher salary schedule up to step 30. So right now I've preliminarily created those steps and adding basically $750 per step from the one below, from 25 up through 30, or 26 up through 30. And so that information has now been updated, what the cost would be for those step raises. We were also talking about a $1,000 increase to steps 0, 1, and 2, since those are not funded by the teacher retention allotment the state passed in House Bill 2. We've now upped that to $3,000 instead of just $1,000 for each step. So that's an increase, as you can see there, between the chart on the left and the chart on the right. The other information has basically stayed the same. You will notice, though, that I am using a lower amount for benefits. After going back and doing a more thorough analysis of what we're currently spending on benefits, I thought my 13% estimate was a little bit high, so I've reduced that to 11%, and I've done that throughout. So that's the biggest change all the way through. All the information you see on the right of the pages versus what's on the left of the pages is that the benefit amount has been decreased from 13% to 11%. So you can see there that with the reduction in the benefit estimate, even though we've got some increases in the gross pay, the total bottom figure there of $1,063,835 is not much more than what we had before. And again, it's mainly because the offsetting of the reduction in the benefit cost. Okay, moving on to page 2. Oh, sorry.
Spoke of going to 30 years on teachers instead of 25. And so looking at going to 30 years, and he specifically calculated a $750 increase per year. So that takes our step 30 to $74,688. So if you're looking from 51 or 53, whatever we're considering, to 74, it gives teachers an opportunity to advance each year to end up 20,000 more than when they started as a teacher.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. I know several of you have talked about retention for those that have been here for a while. This helps us be more competitive in that regard. It's also, I think, as we've seen some of the more competitive school districts, it's a little more common as you get into Woodin Waller's was at least 30 and South Ferris went up to 40, right? So I think it incentivizes those that have been here for obviously 25 plus years to be a destination for those most experienced teachers, instead of the thought, I'm in my last 5 years. Maybe ought to go over to a higher paying district. You know, I think it helps in that conversation. Anything else about this first page that Brooke, Sarah,
What was that?
feel like we?
What was that salary number again for step 30?
No.
Okay.
Now that's with the new pass through of 8,000
With
for
8,000, okay.
for the teachers. But remember some of those top numbers we were looking at school districts, just 35 minutes down 290. It really helps us again with those top teachers. So, anything else about page 1 before Daryl moves us on, Brooke or Sarah?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
How confident are you in that 11% for benefits?
I really think it's 10 point something, so I'm still pretty sure that that's a little bit of an
Okay, so you are
overestimate.
overestimating a little
Yeah,
bit.
still
Okay,
overestimating
good.
a little bit.
That's what I was. I
And
just
that
didn't want
has-
to get caught.
Yeah, and that has nothing to do with the insurance, the health insurance contribution that the district provides. I've got that in a separate bucket. So this is just basically Medicare, TRS stat min that we pay on most professional positions, not on every position, but on most professional positions, workers' comp, unemployment compensation, all the basic other benefits that we have to pay for.
And let me point one thing out too before we turn the page. So just so everybody's so very clear, without additional VEDA revenue, this is where we would sit at going to a step 25, a $1,000 raise for teachers 0, 1, and 2, remembering that there's a pass-through from the state for those above that. And a 2.75% raise for everyone else who's not a teacher. So without any extra VEDA revenue, that's all we can do to balance the budget, okay, without taking on any other major expenses from this past year. And remember, we cut everything everywhere to where I think we were all saying, gosh, how much deeper do we have to cut? So without taking on any major expenses, we're only looking at 2.75% for all non-teaching staff. Again, how I explained the teacher steps there. So beyond with the extra revenue from a VEDA, that's what we're about to get into. So as you turn the page and you see a percentage equate to a number, know that percent is on top of the 2.75. So the 2.75 is almost considered, right? So in other words, if you're going to say, hey, we want to give 8% to paras next year, 8% to paras, you've got a 2.75 already written into that. So it's really looking more at an additional 5-ish%, right, and not the 8% as you flip over to page 2 and see how those percentages equate to different buckets of money. Daryl, you want to work us through this now?
Yeah. Again, not much of a change really on this next page, on page 2. Just went ahead and added 9%. We had talked about 9% raises at one point. Again, this is on top of, so we probably wouldn't go quite that high, but just wanted to go ahead and add that, I guess, mainly for context. So that's been adjusted on every single one of these charts going from this point forward. Again, reducing the benefits from 13 to 11%, so that's been a change going forward. That's really about the only significant changes as far as all the calculations that you see there on page 2. The base numbers for the gross pay have remained the same as they were a few weeks ago at our regular meeting. I did also add in the information, the first chart there on the top, left and right, is for increasing the teacher salary schedule above what we currently have at the step levels. So if we were to increase all the steps by 1% on average, we'd be adding another $203,000 in gross pay, and then so on and so forth from there at higher percentages. The bottom 2 charts on page 2 is where we start to get into the professional the professional staff scenarios. I did add this time exactly which pay grades those are. So again, we're talking about pay grades P1A and then P2 through P9 that are listed in the compensation plan. P1 is the teacher salary schedule, so that's why it's not included, because that's calculated separately with a different scheme. So the rest of this is basically the same information, just adjusted for the decrease in the benefit rates. And then as we go on to page 3.
Any clarifications there from any of y'all? Good? Christy, Sarah, Brooke? Okay, I keep asking that because we've talked through these pages so many times that I want to be sure, okay, did we say everything that we personally have questioned and worked through?
So I just want to add, and just making sure that we're all on the same page. So when you're looking at the professional staff, and Daryl references P1A, P2, P9, like those labels are in your gray spot on your compensation handbook. So that's kind of the section he's referencing. And then all this, not staff member names, but staff positions that occupy those pay grades are listed. So, you can see, oh, that's the occupational therapist are in that pay grade, or that's the sped counselor that's in that pay grade.
So, and I just, you can access that online, but then I sent you one in a Friday email as well. I don't think they have it in a packet in front of them. You can pull it up in that Friday email if you want. Okay, yeah.
Okay, then going on to page 3 is where we start looking, or at the top is where we have the non-exempt staff, the hourly staff. And again, I went ahead and included this time, which I didn't have this in there before, the exact pay grades that we're talking about: CN1 to CN7, that's child nutrition; CT1 to CT8, those clerical technical positions; IS1 to IS6, which are the instructional support positions. I wasn't sure what the S was. Basically our teacher aides, correct? Okay. Then we have the M1A, M5, all the M's, those are maintenance positions, different grades we have for different maintenance positions. So just kind of detailing that out. Other than that, there's...
CN is child nutrition.
Yes.
So it's child nutrition and maintenance.
Yeah.
That first one he went over, when you keep talking about, hey, this is where we're lower in the surrounding districts, we really feel like we ought to give a bigger raise to this group to get them up where they should be. That's that CN and I'm sorry, the CT, where CT and IS, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Instructional, yeah.
And those are I've got those more itemized out on page 4. We'll get to that here in just a second.
Thanks.
So there is a slight change there. The 1%, you can see the 1% gross pay did go down slightly. I've been updating all the people who are leaving, all the people who are replacing the people who are leaving. So there's been just a very small change there, essentially the same, and then again reducing from 13% to 11% on the benefit calculations. And then the bottom 2 charts on page 3, just like before, it's just the grand total of all the charts, the 3 charts before, just kind of putting it all together. So if you wanted to know what a 5% or a 6% or a 4% increase would be on all 3 of those previous charts, you can see that there in those totals. Okay, then we get to page 4, which is completely brand new. You didn't have any of this information last time, neither the left nor the right side. This time, what I've tried to do is detail out, we'll go one more division amongst some of the different pay grades within professional or within non-exempt. So the top 2 itemize the admin professional staff on the left and then the non-admin professional staff on the right. So together, if you put those 2 charts together, the gross pay and the estimated benefits and the totals, that would equal the entire professional chart that we had a couple pages back. So this is just splitting it up a little more finely. So you can see there again, it's the same basic information, just more detailed. Basically, the admin staff are the staff that are coded to pay grades 5 through 9. There are a couple of positions that I felt like probably should be pulled even from P3 and P4, which I made a note of that. because they assistant principals are on P3 and P4, so technically I think they would be considered admin. So they're in that chart, and they're not on the other chart, which is everybody else besides the P5 through P9. So there's a little bit of overlap. You know, when you look at the actual pay grade and you start looking at the exact job codes as they're described and the positions, it's not always 100%. Everything in this pay grade is admin and everything in this one is not. There's a little bit of overlap. So I'm trying to get that as fine-tuned as I can. Then if you look down at the bottom of the page, again, just separating out. Now this time, if you added these two together, you would not get the entire non-exempt chart that we had earlier. You would get most of it, a good chunk of it. But this is CT1 only on the left, and CT on the left and IS on the right. So clerical technical on the left, instructional support on the right, all the different levels of those two particular groups. And so you can see there, again, the different amounts and different percentages. If you just wanted to look at those two separately, those are the two that we've talked about being lower than average probably for us, for our district. So we thought we'd pull those out separately so you could see that in a little more detail as compared to the overall all non-exempt group.
Not specifically with that, but maybe a little more explanation of kind of the compensation handbook. Wanted to point out a few things that, as we have discussion, kind of how we are considering things and making changes to compensation handbook. So when we hire a new employee, they are dropped upon initial hire into their pay grade. And so we consider their years of experience in public education and their years of experience in a like position. And so only upon initial hire are they dropped into that salary formula. And then any advancements after that initial drop for our pay formula staff is based upon a board-adopted raise. So it's not like teachers where I got another year of service, I bump up to year 2. I got another year of service, I bump up to year 3. It is, I dropped in, I had this many years of experience, I had this many years in a like position, this is where I start. And so my advancement is based upon a pay raise adopted by the board. So just so you know, so a lot of the staff, or the staff that's on that professional pay formula, has not had any advancement because there's not been an adopted raise since that 22-23 school year. Okay, and then one thing that the professional organizations always recommend when we're making adjustment to those pay grades, so if we do a 3% raise, it's 3% on midpoint. So if I'm in P2, I'm getting a 3% on midpoint. So my midpoint's $323, 3% on that. So wherever I fall in there, that percentage is the same. When we adjust the pay grade, the recommendation is not to adjust the whole scale 3%. It is half of that. Because if we have new hires coming with the same exact position and we adjust the whole pay scale with 3%, it puts them slightly above our current staff and it creates an equity issue. So I calculated, I pulled a current employee, pulled where they fell in the pay scale, and then I calculated a new employee coming with the same, with 3% adjustment to our scale, and it had them $1.50 more a day. So it does make it a little off kilter, and we do want to recognize and retain our staff and not have, we're hiring somebody and we're going to pay them a little more than you. So, you know, the professional organizations say if you're going to do a 3% raise for staff, adjust your pay scale by 1.5%. So wanted y'all to have that information.
Yeah, and I know that's been a big point for several of you, that we don't want other people coming in new that are making more than the staff that's been here. So Chris has done a lot of work with HR to come up with some numbers that keep that from happening, and again, a plan with equity in mind as we hang on to people and recruit new people. So you know, as we work through this, I threw some numbers out at you in an email. Understand, I guess here, let me kind of walk into a takeaway area. How about that? Takeaways to me are that the teachers, if there was additional revenue with the House bill, the average teacher gets about 13% more next year than what they did this year. So that's huge. Again, if we get the additional Vader revenue, and the board moves our 0 teachers up to a competitive range with the districts around us, which is 53, and the board moves that top end 25-year teacher to 30 years, along with the Vader, I'm sorry, along with the House Bill 2 money that would come through. Again, you're looking at an average of about 13% more as a Brenham ISD teacher. So that's amazing. Other numbers to consider, those professional staff that are not teachers. As Gerald just explained, you have admin, and then you have plenty of professional staff that are not admin. So they don't follow a scale like a teacher. They only get a raise when you give them a raise. Again, typically, as long as schools are functioning in a financial healthy way, of course a cost of living raise is considered, right? Which on an average is 3-ish%. Again, we have not given even a cost of living raise in 3 years. One cost of living raise is on an average about 3%. So what we've pitched out is 6% for professional staff that are not teachers. Again, your teachers are looking at about 13% on an average. The other group that has been fallen behind more than the others, I guess I should say, is the paras. So that's that IS and CT pay grade there, that or spreadsheet piece that Daryl has there for you. We're looking at bumping them up. A suggested number to you is 8% to get them in a competitive market. So those are kind of the buckets we've drawn out. In doing this, in looking at about a 13% raise for teachers, 8% for paras, and 6% for other staff, in doing that, also writing in positions that were lost. Remember, our teacher to student ratio has gone way up as well. So having those positions set aside as we can fill them, that's going to do 2 things. It's going to allow us to make a nicer student-teacher ratio. As those positions aren't filled, put some money back into the fund balance. Okay, so I say that to say all the money that's being considered is all for staff, current staff or needed staff. And while it's not with needed staff, it's in a fund balance waiting for the needed staff. So that's our recommendation. That's where we are now anyway, is a recommendation for you next week. This is not anything to be voted on today. Let me say this too. Thank God we're having this conversation. Okay? It's way overdue, isn't it, Raven? Thank God we're having this conversation. And I truly mean thank God that we are having this conversation. I'm thankful to the state for what they did for our teachers. What I've heard is the state say, hey, you have to make some decisions locally as well. Well, we know our revenue comes from students and it comes from local taxes, okay? And we get charged with sitting at this table to have those conversations. So thank God we're having that conversation, and that our teachers are going to be better off next year than they were this past year. Hopefully all staff in some form of way financially are better off a little bit next year than they were this past year. But at the same time, thank you that we're having a conversation in a strategic planning committee that will come to you with a recommendation next week. This is just executive leadership cabinet kind of working through these numbers, working with comparables and running the data some more. So not a whole lot of sleep for the CFO this time of year. He gets to take his vacations in maybe January. We'll let him out the door, but the summertime, He is working all hours. Let's workshop this out. Any comments, questions that y'all want to?
You know, I'm going to say something. You know, so I just want to make sure, this can be confusing for some individuals who are not looking at the paperwork. So it's a compound question. So are the teachers getting a raise when school starts? Yes. And that's going to be what the state is giving them, correct?
That's correct.
All right. So are the other employees getting a raise when school starts?
That's part of what you have to vote on as a compensation package. We've written in 2.75 for the other staff that are not teachers. For the teachers, we wrote in the $1,000 stipend for 012 teachers, and then you've got that pass-through from the state for the other teachers. So the other part of the conversation, Raven, is all about, if we get additional revenue, which would have to be voted on by this community, this is what could happen. So it's a unique year, and I want all of you to hear this. It's been a lot of work on this staff, working through a strategic planning committee meeting, and then working on scenarios, right? We're not just adopting a budget this year, we're also adopting a what-if budget. So it's been a lot of work to get both of those things ready. Again, I commend all of the staff for basically working through two scenarios, and that's what we have to bring to you next week. Is if we do not get additional revenue because of the Vader, here's the budget compensation package that we are adopting. If we do get additional revenue because of the Vader, here is the compensation / budget that we're adopting. That's what you're going to be asked to do next week. Again, the basic numbers we gave you was just the $1,000 for 012. The other retention for the teachers is just a pass-through from the state, and then a 2.75 for all staff. Remember, none of them have got even a cost of living raise in the last few years. So that's the starting place in our mind. But again, this is why I stressed you the other day too. This is one of y'all's main functions. At the end of the day, I'm going to bring you hire me to bring you comparatives, to be the expert in the room, so to speak, to give you what all the neighboring districts are doing, what the data says, what the research says. But at the end of the day, with the budget, with the compensation package, I don't get a vote. The 7 of you do. So we're going to give you all the information that we can, and our best recommendation, which is what you hired us to do, to bring to you a recommendation to run this district. Again, at the end of the day, what you adopt is what you adopt. So we want to talk through what any of these numbers might look like today, so everybody understands what the consideration is next week.
So let's take the Vader, because it gets confusing. You say so let's take the Vader out the table right now. Mm-hmm. Are the teachers and other employees getting a raise when school starts? I need a yes or no on that.
That's what you have to vote on that.
Yeah.
Our recommendation is our recommendation is the 2.75 for everybody. If you're a teacher, you're getting either 8,000, 5,000, or if you're a brand new teacher or 012 teacher, you're getting 1,000.
So if we vote yes next Tuesday, everybody will get a raise at the beginning of the school
year. It's confusing because we're going if and that, so
Yeah.
I want to make the community know that something's coming. If we vote it that way, something's coming in the next meeting we have. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And so I'm assuming we went
There
to
will
two.
absolutely be a decision next week. There's
I'm
gotta be.
assuming the 2.75 is as high as we can go, not 3? Yeah. Okay.
The only
Yeah, if you remember
Okay.
from the previous meeting,
Yeah.
Originally we didn't have anything in there for 012.
Correct.
And a lot of other districts have that. Oh, yeah. If you remember from the meeting before, we didn't have any steps for 012 because that was left off with House Bill 2, and a lot of other districts utilized that. So even just to put that $1,000 in there for the 012, you see it added that 33.9. So we had to shave off of a little bit from that 3% to be able to stay within that allocations that's coming through. Because if you see the current total puts us at 1.03, and what we're going to get from that is 1.041.
Yeah, so remember, if we took the 1,000 away from 012 teachers, Daryl, I think we felt like we could get closer to that 3%, Raven. But that keeps our starting salary next year at 50, when we see the districts like Belleville, Hempstead, College Station, the districts right around us, are all starting pretty close to 53, if not at 53 next year.
Yeah,
Brooke,
if
is
y'all
that-
actually look at that handout I just gave y'all that y'all seen at the previous meeting, since then, the main one that I've been able to update is Belleville, Bryan, and Navasota all have adopted. And so if you see Navasota is at 52,565 for their 0 year, Bryan is at 52,500 for their 0 year teacher, and Belleville's 53. So if you look at almost every surrounding district, they're either at 53 or they're pushing at 53.
So that's why we're saying, hey, let's put 1,000 there. It only gets all staff 2.75, but let's put 1,000 there, get us to 51. Again, the conversation on the other side is with the additional Vader revenue, Raven, we want to start that 0 teacher at 53, like the neighbors that she just read to you.
So we're gonna reach the goal is, my goal is, our goal, everybody's gonna get a raise. And if we voted on that, that's the goal. Absolutely. Okay, thank you.
And we probably, I know this is simple, but we probably need to make sure everybody understands that like that $8,000, they don't get it all in one lump sum, okay? Because a lot of teachers are hearing that they might get this money and everything. I just want to make sure that they understand that this is part of their salary, not $8,000 bonus of some
No,
kind.
so sometimes you see some sort of retention bonus. It can be written into a check, but a lot of times when you see like a retention bonus, it is that one check.
Yeah, that's different.
Brenham ISD boards have done that in the past. Kyle's talked about doing something similar as some sort of retention practice, so you can do that. But no, we're talking about money written in
Right.
monthly, right?
Right, so they understand it. And then I have another question. Student-teacher ratio, are we going to, does anybody know, principals, do y'all know, are you going to have smaller class sizes? Is it going to be about the same? Any ideas here? About the same?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you remember at the previous board meeting from the academic year from the previous to this, we cut 25 of those positions were educators. 10 administrators, 5.5 were maintenance and custodial. And then if we look, which they're draft right now, but just in our staffing studies, that's just from one fiscal year. The totality, the last couple of years, I think we were 36 teachers that we've lost in two fiscal years. And when we looked at that 25 that we lost last year, just to replace hypothetically, that was, $2.4 million or something. So obviously, with additional revenue from a Vader, gives you 2.4. You're kind of looking at different buckets, right? So it's like, how can we give an equity raise so that we are keeping people here? We're also attracting people here, but new people getting dropped in the scale aren't outpacing the staff that we want to keep long-term in retention. And then what does that alleviate now that we can also put aside? So then next year, can we add some of these FTE backs, like especially at the elementary grade levels where we have high class sizes?
So we'll still have some classes
Yeah,
with,
because hypothetically, I mean, even if the Vader were to pass or we had a big revenue source where we could apply these, they pass in November, those immediately can get put into staff paychecks starting in November, and then you fix it throughout the year. You'd have to earmark it like going forward, like Clay said, as you're able to do FTEs, or if you don't fill some FTEs, then you'd be able to utilize that in fund balance to have that autonomy to do those in the future.
okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
And so looking at kind of what the proposal was, if there's additional Vader revenue, it's still left enough revenue available from Daryl's initial calculations to possibly add back 18 positions at $75,000 per position. So it did leave funds to add that back.
18 if we give everybody else raises. But I want to make sure I go over a couple things. First of all, first question I have is the numbers you gave us, Daryl. It says 1.041 is what our revenue increase is going to be. And then the updated chart at the bottom is 1.063. That's spending more than we're making, so that's not possible. But I'm assuming this is workshopping, so I would like to halfway propose an edit to this and make it 2,000 raise for teachers at step 0, 1, and 2 instead of 1 on the left side and 3 on the right side, because I think that's a hybrid and that saves us approximately, based on my math, about $40,000, which is going to fix that problem. So that's number one. Number two, I know this is just proposed and this is just for us to workshop. And Raven, I think what you were kind of asking is a lot of what I've been getting questions about too. Who gets raises? When do we get raises? And why do we get raises? How many raises? So just to, I guess, use the analytical mind of making sure everybody knows exactly what the process is, and kind of like what Clay was saying is teachers in year 4, 5, and 6 all get a $4,000 raise from the state. Teachers in years 7 plus get an $8,000 raise from the state. Nobody else does, except for we have this $1 million that we're supposed to spend on raises. It's how are we going to spend it? And it looks like we're looking at 2.75% as the max we're going to be able to do for non-teacher staff, which is our paras and all the others, you know, the entire gambit of everybody that was in here. So it's our job to figure out how much we're going to be able to do. However, I think I can't speak for the board, but I think you would all agree with me that I don't think that's enough. And I think everybody probably agrees, which is why we need to have that second discussion on the 12th of increasing our tax base of 3%, having this Vader, and doing that. I think it's a no-brainer. I think it's necessary. I think it has to happen. And I've been calculating a ton of numbers over here on what it would look like if we got that full 3-cent Vader increase. I think it's almost mandatory for us to get the city behind us and get this passed. So want to make sure I mention that, Daryl, on the $1,000, $2,000, and $3,000 on the 0, 1, and 2, because those teachers do not get any raise whatsoever. And then wanted to make sure, because we can't be upside down.
So you understand exactly, what we're planning on doing is only doing the $1,000 raise if we don't have additional funds, and we're only planning on doing the teacher steps up to 25. So it's the second chart, the one on the right, would be, you're right, we would not have enough money, so we would need the additional funding from Vader or whatever.
I think the step raise going up to teachers, going up to step 30 for teachers should be, and I think that should be done no matter what. And I don't see the extra $7,000 being that much of a hindrance.
No.
And if my math is correct, we take 180 and we take the benefits mandated at 256 and we take the 2.75 at 502, and then 3,000 raise for teachers. If you do the math backwards, that comes out to a little over 82,000. You do the math, that saves us approximately $40,000. So we would be at 1.02 instead of, and we would be basically 20,000 in the positive. And I think teachers 26, 27, 28, 29, 30 years should get an increase. A teacher here on year 28 should not get the same as a teacher in year 25. Again, I think everybody agrees with that. I think that should be included no matter what, period. So I would like to have that in there. And then if we do our teachers instead of 1, I think we should be at 2. We're right there in the middle, and that puts us right at the same of where Bryan and College Station are. It puts us right at Navasota, ahead of Somerville, slightly behind some of the others like Belleville and Sealy. So to me, it seems like a no-brainer. And then there's other things we can do once we get to a Vader with more increases and more money and more raises. But with the 1.04 that we are getting, that would be my proposal on how we would take care of raising pay for everybody else.
And you're changing 0, 1, 2 to 2,000? Or,
Keeping the 180 for step raises,
correct?
changing 3,000 to 2,000, which would make that 82,000.
Yes.
Benefits have to stay the same, and 2.75 stays the same.
So then
That
that
comes
puts
to
it
1.04, approximately. I mean, 1.02, approximately.
I was going to say that.
Instead of,
Okay.
I mean, that way we're 20,000 in the black from the 1.04.
Yeah, I was gonna.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. So those bottom two charts, basically we just need the bottom left chart with the $1,000 012 updated to showing the correct benefits amount, and then seeing what options there are there, because that chart does me no good with the benefits at 13% because it's kind of out of date. So just kind of updating that, and then seeing an option at $2,000 for the 012 teachers, and maybe even a $2,500 option at 012 for the 012 teachers, just so we can stay below the amount of money that is coming in from HB2 that we need to spend on the teachers, that we need to spend on the teachers and staff per the requirements of the SSRA, ABC, and the BA and the basic allotment. So just trying to understand those numbers better, and I definitely think we can all come to an agreement, a conclusion, and an accurate vote, especially for what we know is coming in for HB2, and then this, like you said, the second step is the Vader equation of what the maximum is that we can get. If we can get the entire, the district, the voting population for our district on board, which I feel like as a team we can, and then just kind of moving forward for that. So.
Yeah, I can definitely get that information updated this afternoon for y'all.
What else? Anything else you need that's not, again, we run this and run this and run this and run this. So if that's the only thing that you need, then I feel like the team here did a pretty good job of getting what you need to make a decision. Again, we'll bring you, after we have this new bit of information, Kyle and Justin, after we have this new bit of information, we'll use that in our calculations, bring you a recommendation. It's no different than any board decision. One of you will have to make a motion of some sort, and I would assume that's going to create a little bit of healthy conversation. Again, let me say this when I say that. Hey, thank God we're having this conversation, right? I welcome this conversation. Wish we could have had it last year. Anything else that y'all need beyond that one piece there?
We're not having a potential future Vader conversation yet, correct? We're just talking about what we have and not what we hopefully want and ideas on what to do with that. I'm just making sure. We're not talking about potential Vader because
Yeah.
I'd like to
So good question.
talk about it
yeah.
if we can or should, but if that's a conversation better had later, then let's
So
wait.
let's have the strategic planning committee make their formal recommendation to you as far as the INS for a potential bond and the M&O for a potential Vader. I think that would probably be the best time to have that. You've got the final say. They're going to bring to you a recommendation not to exceed the golden pennies that are considered here. That goes directly to the decision you made last meeting. Remember not to go beyond these 3 pennies. So they'll bring you a recommendation within these 3 pennies. And like I say, at some point through this healthy conversation, somebody's going to have to make a recommendation of some sort. We'll get you started in the conversation as we're going to bring you our recommendation. Okay? And let me say, I appreciate the passion and the consideration, and we all want to do something for the staff. And I feel very fortunate that so many of you take a deep look because it matters to you. I'm so thankful for that. I've got a dedicated team here that works 60 hours a week minimum, and they're going to bring to you their very expert opinion. Okay, so. I would encourage you to take a strong consideration of that, and of course you can vary from that as much as you as a board decides to. But this team right here, it's not just a hobby for them. Okay, so hear them out and have a conversation, and like I say, at some point next week, somebody's gonna have to make a motion. Yes, sir.
I don't know that Kyle's question was actually answered.
Okay.
And I kind of have the same question. So right now we're just talking about the pot of money that we are going to receive from the state, which is at $1 million, whatever. we then need to have a separate hypothetical conversation, whether it needs to happen now, or what I'm trying to find out about what we're going to do with the hypothetical 3-cent
Yeah.
Vader money, which you just talked a bunch about the strategic plan, but what I'm trying to find out is, do we have to have a plan for the Vader money by next Tuesday? And if we do, we need to figure it out now.
Yeah.
Because
Yes.
that conversation needs to happen separate from the conversation that we're having already about the guaranteed money.
Yeah, we can definitely have some of that conversation. And the strategic planning committee is going to bring you a recommendation. Several of you, avoiding a quorum, are on that committee. You know the way that's trending. By design, we report out that information to you just so continuously. If you're not on that committee, if you are on that committee, again, by design, you're there so you have an ear to just exactly what those conversations are. So yes, we can start the conversation today with an understanding that we don't have to make a decision until next week. But if there's any sort of questions or conversations that you just want to have to sort of get us started down the road, then we can do that. So it's your floor. Any of you want to say something to the other board members? This is what I think. This is where I think we should start. Then I welcome that. Just know we don't have to land that plane today.
Right.
And I think it's important too for us to realize that people are going to vote on this Vader. And so it's important that everybody understands what it is and how it affect them and how it affect the community. And so I think that's important too. We're planning ahead. We all know that Vader's going to go through and the public is going to love it and life will be good. Yeah, I know. But in the meantime, we also have to remember we've got voters out there who need to know more about it and understand it so that when this comes to pass and when it is passed, everything's going to be fine, right?
Can I answer
Exactly.
the question too with this? That part of the reason I wanted this meeting today, this workshop today, is for the very question you're asking. You have a lot of decisions to make in a week. Okay, you've got to hear the strategic planning committee out. You've got to adopt a tax rate, and you've got to decide on a budget if we only have what we have or if we end up with some more because some additional Vader revenue. So again, we've got numbers for you now. We'll have a strong recommendation for you next week as we are. I've already kind of planted a seed where we are. But we'll have a strong recommendation, and then y'all, at the end of the day, you make the decision. So if y'all want to start the conversation now, then please do.
Quick, Daryl, I have a question. If we go from 51 to 50, or $1,000 raise for teachers at steps 0, 1, and 2, and then go to 52, like I said, at 2,000, does that impact the tax implications? I'm assuming that means we're paying a little bit more taxes, a little bit more benefits, a little bit more all that too. Did I push my button? I did. Okay. How much of an effect does that have going from 1 to 2,000 or from 2 to 3? And is that calculated in this number where you give us the 123, or is that a separate number? Where does that affect at?
So yeah, the 123,000 that you see there on the
Yes, sir.
second chart, that does include the $3,000 increase, and that's the 111,000 the gross pay, and then the 12,210 is the benefits on the 3,000. So if we go down to 2,000, then the 111 goes down, and the
Got it.
12
Okay, so
2,000
that
goes
does
down.
include all of the above. Okay, got it. Just making sure. I wanted to make sure I got that straight. And then, yeah, bless you.
Rough math, the 2,000 is at 82,140, yeah.
It's at the 1.02, which would give us $20,000
Correct.
slight black wiggle room of whatever new teacher comes on board, new para comes on board, new substitute, whatever. It just gives you a little bit more wiggle room, because if we go up at all from that, we're going to be crossing from black to red. Yeah, sorry, I was doing a lot of calculations, so no offense, Clay, but I heard about half of what you said. But are we?
I think you always hear about half of what I'm just.
That's true. That's true. Selective hearing, you know. So, yes, we are talking about the future potential Vader options, right? I don't like to lean in. Do you have my mic volume good? Okay, cool. I spent a lot of time on this, and normally I don't spend this much time on something, but I feel like this is a big deal. It's a big decision. So I really wanted to make sure I was, A, creative, B, thinking outside of the box, because that's just kind of how I want to come up with something, but I want to be kind of analytical about it as well. So what I did, and this is mostly for the rest of the board here, what I did was the step raises are a guaranteed expense, right? So that first column, 180, that's, you know, that's going to be spent no matter what, in my opinion, right? And I'm skipping the teachers right now. If we go down to the benefits mandated, that's guaranteed going to be spent, right? So now it's back up to the teachers. What I just proposed a second ago was $2,000, right? And so if we look forward to if this Vader passes, if we have this 3 cents, right, when? I love your optimism, Bonnie, but if it passes, we need to be transparent about what we want to do with that money, I feel like, okay? And that's been what I've been saying for 2.5 years, is all about transparency on the board. And so, and I feel like everybody here agrees we need to be transparent. Otherwise, we're wasting our time and it's not going to pass. So if we do $2,000 for 0, 1, and 2, I believe whatever that percentage increase comes out to, or it's a flat 2,000 for every single teacher, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way to 30, however many years they've been here, your salary should increase by $2,000 all the way up. And I calculated that math, and if we do it that way, that puts us, where was my numbers at?
Kyle, they already gave.
I know. I understand that. I'm talking about giving, instead of, because this whole conversation is about how much of a raise are we going to give our teachers? What percentage raise, right? So I'm equating, let's delete the percentage number of 3% or 2% or 5%, delete that. Whatever that percentage increase is, I think it should be a it should end up being $2,000. And based on my math, it's right at about 3.5%. Okay? 3.6, 3.4, I don't know the exact numbers, but a 3.5 whatever percent increase, which would give every teacher on the entire pay scale, a $2,000 raise. So, yeah, go ahead.
Because I've heard you talk about this before, so I want to be sure what's the difference in when we take our current pay scale, we move the zero teacher from 50 to 53, as we've discussed. We take the top end teacher of 25, Christie, which is currently like 63, and we put it at 30, which comes out to, without the $8,000. No, that's with the 8,000.
The math I came up with.
So when we make that shift, what's the percent difference? Because I think, aren't we pretty close to that already with what Kyle's asking for? Is that not what we're?
So while he's calculating, because Daryl might need a minute, while he's calculating, what I was looking at is we have on our website the teacher pay scale, and we have it in our, whatever you call that thing. Thank you. The compensation handbook. I've tried to say that like 5 times, and I keep forgetting what it's called. Compensation handbook. The teacher scale, whatever the number is, make it plus $2,000. All the way across the board, all the way up. Looks like Brooks about to pull. Yes, there was. Oh, you just had it. There it goes. So pick a number, add $2,000 to it. Across the board. My calculations say that it's going to cost the district approximately $791,000 to do that. Okay? You want to round it up to 8? Round it up to 8 because I'm probably doing really fast iPhone calculations on my math. But anyway, I'm talking about my proposal across the board, what I was saying. Next was what we've all been focused on is the non-exempt. Okay? We want to make sure we get them a big raise. I think in addition to the 2.75, in the end, it should equal 7%. And I'll give you more on that in a second. But that 7% number, if you turn to page 3, I think that number comes out to $673,000. Is that right? 672.9 or something, so round it up, $673,000. Yep, so go to page 3, top right corner. Hourly staff, non-exempt, CN1, CN7, CT1, CT8, IS1, IS6, MA, whatever. Yeah, 672, so rounded up of $102, and we're at 673. right? I'm just using easy math here.
So you're not talking just
Clerical versus instructional.
Talking about those two groups, or are we talking about all the?
That was everybody in that group. That wasn't breaking them down into two separate groups. That was all the hourly staff, every single hourly staff employee, not breaking it out. All hourly, correct. All the hourly, aka all the non-exempt, yes. All of them, 7%. I don't think your mic's on.
Yeah, we've talked about the
Correct.
paras being that clerical staff and instructional support paras.
Right.
And then we've talked about all the hourly, but you mean
Yes, I mean
the
all,
hour-
because
okay.
even though our paras are behind, all our hourly are behind as well, I think, well, for the most part. I mean, probably 80% of them I feel like are behind, and it doesn't matter. They, like you said earlier, they haven't had a raise. This takes care of that. This puts them in pace. This puts them in line, and it gets them where they need to be.
Yeah,
so
no, I
it's 7%.
I appreciate the
number.
thought. I just want to remind everybody the focus on that group was because was it just last year child nutrition got a bump. When we brought transportation in-house from Durham, they got a bump, and we brought custodial in-house from ABM, they got a bump. So the one group that has not received, again, are those classroom support paras and the clerical staff, office staff paras. That's the only reason we differentiated. If you wanted to take an extra look at that smaller group. But no, I appreciate the thought of 7% for all of them as
Right.
well.
Well, when I was looking at this, I didn't have them separated out. So having them separated might make it a little bit different. We can adjust those. Again, this is the 30,000-foot approach proposal, and we can change it from there. But that was the other one. And then which would be page 2, right? Our exempt. Is that what it is? Professional staff, all the exempt, right? Okay. I know it's not exciting, but I definitely don't think it needs to be the same. It doesn't need to be as high. And so I calculated in 2% raise, which puts us at $173,000 for that. And I know it's not the 3 or 4 or 5% that everybody was hoping, but these are salary. They're making more, and I'm focusing more of our resources on the hourly non-exempt. And then the last thing I did was I calculated how many, and this what I asked y'all for, and I know the rest of the board y'all saw the email asking for, how many years do we have based on all of the employees in the entire district. And I did the math. I added it all up. It took me a while, but I did the math on how many people have been here for 1 year, how many have been here for 2 years, how many have been here for every single year all the way through, and then looked at what if we gave everybody a bonus based on their time of service at the school. Not as a school employee overall, but just in Brenham, because those were just Brenham numbers. And what I came up with is if we do $100 per year of service. So in other words, you've been here for 8 years, that's at $800. If you've been here for 15 years, it's $1,500. Does that make sense? For every year of service, $100. My calculations came to a little bit under 600. It was closer to like 560, but rounded up, $600,000. You add all those numbers up, every single number of all the bonuses, all the raises, everything, it comes out to $2.7 million. We have a total, and I'm including the 1.04 that we have a total of 3.4. So that gives us extra wiggle room, extra fluff to hire an extra kindergarten teacher or 2 or 3, an extra first grade teacher, and very importantly, add money to our general fund because it is dangerously, scarily low. So this was just my proposal. This is what I spent a couple hours on trying to figure it out. I'm sure y'all spent time trying to figure out other numbers and other things. But if we're going to have that discussion, I figured I'll at least shoot first and tell you what I came up with. And those are my numbers. That's my thoughts.
There it is. If we received extra Vader revenue, so I forgot where I was originally at. Brittany, I was on a flow there, and you just. Yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you very much, Jared. We wouldn't hire those teachers until spring, right? So that allows you to put that money back that you allotted for those positions until they're hired. I mean, let's say, for example, we we put money back for all 25 teaching positions that we absorbed, 25 plus. You don't want to just hire the first 25 applicants, and once this were to pass through by the voters. So as we market, for those positions, and we have people that we would love to join this family, then we fill those. In the meantime, again, those FTEs, the money allotted for those full-time employees, is in your fund balance. So.
Does anybody have any questions?
I just wanted to push back a little, Kyle. Just want to bring something up for consideration. As we're looking at, you mentioned, and I definitely appreciate the passion for our clerical, our instructional support, and our teachers. But I do want to, as I, work with new hires and work with staff retention, looking at the professional, non-exempt staff, the professional exempt staff. I want to point out several of the positions. Educational diagnosticians, school counselors, assistant principals. So many of the people in those positions we've hired within the last 3 years. So if they came with no experience and they're a brand new assistant principal, they are towards the bottom of that pay scale and they're on that minimum salary. So looking at those and 2%, so they've been here 3 years, they could leave us and go somewhere else and be dropped into their salary scale and make something much greater. So really, just want to point out that we do want to continue to retain those staff as well.
Of course, and that's where the bonus comes in to help out, to help want them to continue to be here, which is why if somebody's been here 3 years, it's only $300, but it's $300. However, if we have a limited amount of funds, so we have to choose where we're going to spend it, and we need to spend it at the people who need it the most, not somebody who's got a $52,000 salary, somebody who makes $18,000 a year is who I feel like needs that bonus more. And so, I'm sorry, but that's just where I want to make sure our teachers are rewarded and kept and retained, and I want to make sure our non-exempt hourly, lower income are kept and retained and appreciated. And that's also where a bonus of $500 for your 5th year for somebody who makes $20,000 a year, that's a large amount of money, and that's actually changing that 7% closer to probably 10% if you think about it. But yeah, there's only so. I would love to have a $10 million influx so we could give everybody large raises. In fact, maybe the board could get paid. But I'm just kidding. It was a joke. It was a joke. But my point is, if we have to pick and choose, I'm gonna point my resources and allocate them accordingly to whoever needs the most, whoever has the highest need. And so that's where I'll push back on that. But yeah, if we had more. Sure. I mean, there's also an argument to say we need the 3-cent Vader to turn around and put 100% of it into our general fund because we can't even go a month without operating with zero income. I mean, our general fund is so low, it's dangerous. We're at 2 weeks, and we need to be at 3 months. So we can go a lot of different ways, the extreme radical version of it, but I feel like this is a very liberal way of spending money. I feel like we're giving it out and saying, here, you get a raise, and you get a raise, and you get a raise. It's almost like Oprah in here, but you can't give everybody everything, so that's just why I came up with that. But again, this is just an idea. This is the 30,000-foot view. That's our job, to come in and hone in on specifics. This is just what I thought of. We want to change it. That's obviously up to us to figure out what we're going to do with it and how it's going to play out.
Yeah, no, again, like I said at the beginning, appreciate the passion and how deep all of you are looking into this. It is a big decision, as I point out. It's one of the biggest decisions you make as a board. I want to tell you again, when we make a recommendation to you, it's going to be based off of a lot of data and research, what school districts around us are doing, what school districts across the state are doing, what districts approximately our size in our area are doing. And Kyle, you've got a lot of professional staff that would agree. I said the other day when I was talking to some new teachers how they look so forward to those students coming in, as we all do. But as a leader, You feel that same way about your teachers. So to your point, I mean, you just absolutely want to take care of those teachers and the hourly employees that work for you, because we're all in the service business and we want to take care of them. Also, though, I want to bring to you a professional expert opinion based off of the other professional staff that are not teachers, that are administrators. Know that when you consider a compensation package, you're doing the same thing for your teachers, of course. You're not just considering a raise for the current staff. You're considering a competitive market value for bringing other people in. So you want to look at your top level teachers. Yes, what are they getting? At the same time, you're going to have assistant principal positions open up, and you're going to have teachers that go to graduate school, get their master's or principal certification to become an assistant principal and or principal. Is it worth doing that? Is it worth going back to school, getting that master's degree, stepping up into that position for the number that you have connected to that position? So those are all considerations you have to have. What does our top level teacher make? What does our first year AP make? That's the numbers we bring to you, again, based off of the districts around us in our market and across the state of Texas. So when we bring you a recommendation next week, and it's going to be pretty close to what we're talking about now. I liked that conversation that Kyle and Justin took us down earlier with a new look at some of that. So we'll tweak our recommendation a little bit, but we're going to make a recommendation based off of those around us. Like I say, at the end of the day, y'all have to have that conversation. We're going to give you our opinion. I don't get a vote. 7 of you do. And let me say this, and I said it to this group before we walked in here. Whatever you approve, we're going to do it better than anybody else.
There you go.
That's our job, is to execute it, to put it in motion. So we're going to give you a very professional, maybe passionate, just like you bring passion, we bring passion too. Maybe passionate opinion. At the end of the day, you make the decision, and we'll make it happen. Any other questions or comments about any of this? Anything else we can get to you before that day next week, Archer?
I saw that we're still giving $1,000 to those teachers who get their master's degree or have their master's degree. Is that still correct? What about those who get their PhD?
I think it is just the $1,000 for the master's.
Just for the master's?
And it's for teaching staff, so if you're if you're an assistant principal, that's a requirement of being in that position, so you do not get that if you're.
Do you know off the top of your head how many master's degrees we have in the district?
There are quite a few, but I
That's what I
don't
thought.
know off the top of my head, but there are quite a few.
Which is good. We encourage them to go back to school, but that stays put. We'll still have that available to them. Okay, thank you.
Sarah, do our professional exempt staff, our APs, and those folks that we're talking about earlier, do they receive the teacher incentive allotment? Are they eligible for that?
No, the state is looking into doing like a school-wide for principal teacher incentive allotment, but right now it's only for 087. So our teachers that are student-facing 50% of the time. The legislative is in discussion about that, but right now, no.
Hey, great question and point. Can you, just for the sake of the listeners and the board, as we're talking about compensation possibilities, can you kind of update us just as to when we might first see some benefits from TIA?
So this year we received June 1st that we were eligible, our application was accepted. This year will be our data capture year. So we have to pass over 13 validation checks by Texas Tech to make sure that our data, that's who TA outsources it to, is Texas Tech, to make sure that we are positively correlating. What that means is if we have a student growth measure that's very high and a T-test score that T-test is the rubric in which we use to evaluate teacher practice. then that not as low, then that's negatively correlated. So they're looking for alignment in that. And so we will find out, we'll submit all of our data in 2026, like the fall of 2026. We will find out the summer of 2027 if we passed data capture. If we pass data capture, then teachers that we put forth for a designation to receive that incentive would be eligible for payout in the fall of 2027. We're working on our teacher incentive allotment handbook right now to have it up and ready to go. By the time teachers come back, we're doing it in phases. So right now we have phase 1, which is a lot of our core teachers that will be eligible. And then we're looking into moving into phase 2 and phase 3 to try to include more teachers. Applications come due April 15th for us to expand what we originally submitted to expand into phase 2 and phase 1. But it is a rigorous, robust educator evaluation system, but it does increase teachers' compensation if they earn it, because it's performance-based, so it's not a guarantee. If they earn that, then it can increase their pay.
Legislator did add an additional designation so that it should hit about 50% of teachers now.
Thanks for that info. I was just thinking about how we can get some of those folks a little bit more money, because I do agree with CJ, but I also agree with Kyle as well. We've got to get those paraprofessionals, non-exempt hourly staff up to where they need to be. That's my top priority. That's my sole priority in this exercise, is getting them up to where they need to be. And so I know that 2% is a little bit rough, but at the end of the day, we're trying to, and everybody here understands this, we're trying to stretch so much money as far as it goes, and we're just trying to find a middle ground where we can all agree, and I think we're doing a good job of that so far. Just some more creative ideas, like Kyle mentioned, of the retention bonus, I think is a great idea. Something that very few districts do in my research, something that would make us special and different and unique, and I'm all for that. So that's just kind of my thoughts.
Yeah, when Kyle first asked me for that, we looked around. We found a, do you want to pass that out? I think we gave him the closest neighboring district we found that did something similar was from, was that Belleville, Christie? Belleville. So this is what Belleville ISD is doing. Again, looked into this after Kyle had expressed an interest, not in Belleville, but just the idea. So this is the closest district we found doing it. This is what they're doing. So if that's something you want to do and consider, a lot of times when you see this done, it is done. Bonnie, you asked about being distributed across the paychecks. A lot of times when you see this piece done, it's done on its own, Daryl, like almost at maybe at Christmas or at the end of the school year or whatever they whatever the board wants to do there. So that's when you see that done, and it's really neat if you time it right, you know. Pretty cool to receive in November, December, at Christmas time. It's a pretty neat extra bump. Something to consider, Christy, is if when you do it like that, or Daryl, maybe the money's not considered in your TRS credit.
No,
is that right?
Yes, that's correct. If it's a single payment and it's not for services provided like your regular pay is, it is not TRS creditable. That's TRS's rules. It has to be actually paid out in normal, regular installment payments as you earn the money. So for this, basically they look at that as a bonus, which they don't count as credible.
They also
What if it's
pay
two
tax,
payments?
right? They do pay tax on that?
Yes, they would have to pay tax on
Because
it.
instead of getting a $1,000 check, you're going to get probably $750.
Right, yeah, Medicare and income
Yeah,
tax, all that would still be.
that gets taken
It
out.
just wouldn't be TRS taxed.
Right.
Because it wouldn't
If
count
you remember
towards
the
that.
year that we got retention bonus, I was still in the classroom here. We got them at Christmas, but the board calculated it that way so that everybody got $1,000 exactly. So yeah, so y'all calculated in the cost, yeah, so the tax ahead of time.
I think we did that with us.
Yes, it was through SO. It was done at Christmas.
Hey, read, if you didn't do so, read what we just gave you from Belleville ISD. Take just a second and read that. I mean, that's an important point. That's why it was do it. Yeah, would you please?
So it says, whatever board, the trustees adopting a budget that include resources dedicated to the enhancement and retention stipends. These stipends serve as a public purpose to the benefit of blank ISD to seek and retain employees and increase morale. These stipends will be implemented pursuant to the compensation plan and availability of funding to support these stipends. If funding is not available as determined by the Board of Trustees and Superintendent to support these stipends, there shall be no obligation to these stipends. Specifically, the board is budgeting a December enhancement stipend based on the graduated plan by BISD years of service. The Board of Trustees also reserves the right to amend the budget and to provide enhancement or retention stipends at other times during the year if funding becomes available, and the stipend serves as a public purpose and benefits. And then you kind of see there's some asterisks underneath the chart that they gave that just reiterates the amounts listed above will be based on available funds as determined by the superintendent, and then enhancement retention stipends are adopted on a per employee basis. The number of positions does not dictate the number of stipends, one stipend per employee.
So the reason I point that out is you saw more of these even lately as funding has gotten really tight. Because you didn't know if you could predict, if you could project, let's say in the next 5, 6, 7, 8 years we'll be able to continue this. You just, financially, ISDs across the state have been a little unstable, and instead of moving the pay scale, they gave a retention bonus so that they could, if they had to function, they could take it away. So, but at the same time, it is a pretty cool gesture. It is a unique thing that's neat to do. I think Brooks said, "Hey, that'd be awesome to do before Black Friday." You know, I mean, there's some cool factors to it. So, something else to consider. And thank you for bringing this one up.
Yeah, I do want to make a note there, a point. I'm not a huge fan of anything compensation that's got the word stipend attached to it, because it's obviously can be taken away. So I feel like, you know, taking that question out, like, is the board going to take this away in the future? A different board comes in, they're going to take this away, and I don't want to give the future boards that option. So that's where, you know, make sure that whatever we do vote on, it's not, the wording is not in there a stipend. There's no asterisks attached to it. You know, the amounts listed above will be based on available funds. I don't want that. I don't want any of that included in the conversation, because it's like we have to take care of our teachers and our staff more than our teachers. Our teachers have been taken care of by the state, I feel like, for this year and next year. We do need to look at our 0, 1, 2 year teachers, but I think we need to really step up and take care of our staff. And I would like to see possibly a little bit more breakdown of when you've pulled out the clerical and technical and then the instructional support. Can we see the other bucket of what's left in that? Non-exempt employees. I can do the math, but you can do a lot quicker in your Excel sheet than me over here scribbling and messing something up. But that way we can really, you know, Archer said his main goal is to take care of the instructional and clerical support staff. And I think we just kind of verify those numbers there, because like your nutrition seen a bump, your transportation seen a bump, and I think they're in that same category of non-exempt. So I think we can kind of separate those out and just, you know, I hate to play with the numbers, work the numbers to where we can get the maximum benefit for each of the categories and the groups that are there. But I can't wait to hear the further recommendations from the staff here based off of our conversations today. I will say again, I don't want anything with the word stipend attached to it, because I don't want the question from the teachers or the staff or principals, counselors that, hey, is the board going to take this away from us next year or the year after that? I don't want to play those games.
Yeah, so
I agree. I don't want to take it away either. I don't care how we word it. Delete the whole paragraph as far as I'm concerned. It's just a, you know, retention bonus, period. $100 per year of service, period. Every employee, all of them. I don't care where you work. If you're working in the cafeteria, if you're a librarian, if you're a custodian, if you're maintenance, if you work in the administration office. I don't care. Every single staff member, I feel like, if you work at BISD, it's a BISD retention bonus. And no, I don't want it to go away. I want it to be there. So if you do leave, or somebody has left, and they decide, you know what, I kind of want to go back, and they did work here for 4 years and they left, well, those 4 years count. Now you're on year 5. So let's get you set up for that. And yeah, I agree. I'd like to see more breakdown, but I'm kind of the mindset, I think all hourly employees need a raise. That's at that same number. But either way, but yes, back to your point, I completely agree. I don't want any, technically every future board adopts the budget based on compensation, but they could all change it, but I don't want it to be easy.
Hey, let me make one more point to you as we bring you some numbers next week. Remember that while a lot of districts around us struggled, some districts still gave raises that maybe couldn't afford to do so by dipping into their fund balance. Okay, and we couldn't afford to do that, as you all know. We could not dip into fund balance to do that. So
No, like I looked at
no, but the
Brian's
point
too.
being, even though while
7 million.
people were struggling, you know, just like we were, a lot of them still dipped into their fund balance to give raises. So again, I want to say that our staff has not gotten even a cost of living raise in several adopted budgets now. So we feel like we've got to make up some ground when we make this decision. Okay, so it's about those that are with us and recruiting a healthy staff in the future, putting that best face in front of that campus, that classroom, which Sarah has talked a lot about. So, anything else for us? Anything else you need to see?
So I just want to ask my other colleagues, I agree with you, Justin, about the language related to these stipends. I think it should be absolutely permanent, never go away. How are we feeling about this approach? Do we like it? Do we not like it? Correct.
I do like the idea of it. I just wonder if the teachers wouldn't rather just have that as part of their salary instead of as a stipend for them. Like if we take that money and just give it to them throughout the year instead of once a year. I mean, I have to think about it that way too. I mean, would I love to get one? Absolutely. That'd be fantastic to have a little extra money right before school starts. Right before Christmas or something. But you know what we have to think about what's best for them. Is to have this on a monthly basis to where they're getting more and it's helping with their daily bills and everything that they have, or once a year? It's a good question to ask.
Right. So I don't necessarily disagree, but if I'm a staff that's on the edge of potentially leaving, no matter the money that's already in my pocket because I'm just fed up or whatever, if I'm on the edge of leaving and then I get another little something on the side, I mean, that would encourage me to stay. And for me, that's a big deal. We got to retain our people. I don't know. That's just my opinion.
I understand that. I agree, but if you have a 5-year teacher and you're going to give them $500, that's not going to sway them enough to stay when they're going to another school district and making $7,000, $8,000, $10,000 more a year. You know, $500 is not going to move the needle for a lot of those teachers.
Sure, I agree. And that's why I think we need to take Waller out of this discussion because we can't compete with them. They're a 6A school. They're growing tremendously, and they pay $10,000 more than we do. But every other district on this list we need to be talking about. We can't, I mean, if somebody wants to go for $10,000 more, there's nothing we can compete with them. However, the bonus from the state is half. So they get 4 instead of 8. So we're helping to draw that gap a little bit. And then an extra bonus on top of that helps. And then our raise helps. But when I sat down and calculated this and I thought about it, the state took care of the teachers and we're giving them a raise and a bonus as well. I was looking at the person that's making $22,000 a year and $29,000 a year. Those people get on their 8th year, 10th year, they get a $1,200 bonus or whatever that number is. That's a large number. and it's increasing that 7% to 8, 9, 10%. It wasn't necessarily helping the teacher out as much, which it will help close that gap just a tad, but we can't compete with Waller. But if this will help attract from Belleville and Burton and Snook and Navasota and get those teachers here as well. Instead of us only recruiting what's left of whoever else left the district to go somewhere else, we're able to recruit people from other districts that are interested in coming here. Because when our principals are interviewing 3 people for 5 positions is not helpful. But if they're interviewing 10 people for 5 positions, it's a lot easier. And so if our salary is in line, because if we go up $2,000, $1,000, $3,000, whatever, we are at the top of everybody else except for Waller, or really close, within a couple $100, right? If we go up $2,000, then we are literally $1,200 away from the highest district around us, and we're over half of the districts. We're beating most of them. So I'm not competing with Waller because we can't. I mean, let's just call a spade a spade. We can't compete with a $62,000 starting teacher pay. We just can't. We can compete with Sealy, Hempstead, College Station, Bryan, Belleville, Navasota, Somerville, Caldwell, Giddings, Snook, Burton, and Round Top. We can compete with them, and we are competing with them, and I think we can compete very well with them. And this just is an extra cherry on top is my only point. But my focus was doing this bonus. It's something to, whether it's a 1% boost, but it's something that helps everybody else, not just the teachers. The teacher on 5 years, $500, I know it's not going to move the needle for that person. The teacher that's on their 20th year getting $2,000, yeah, that definitely moves the needle. But the para that's here, or the custodial staff that's been here for 20 years getting a $2,000 bonus, that's a 10% increase in their pay for the most part, and that's a huge deal.
You're talking about for Vader or within the?
Yeah, Vader.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify for everybody.
Absolutely.
Okay.
This is Vader only conversation.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's a 6 in one hand, half dozen in the other when you talk about what to do with it. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm not overly upset about either idea. I'd say either way, we're trying to give the teachers and the staff more money, and that's a good thing, regardless of how we give it to them. You know, I mean, like you said, thank God we're having this conversation, because these are fun discussions to actually have when we have a little bit of, hopefully a little bit of money to play with to pay everybody. You know, I mean, I've been my 5th year here, and then we've given 4%, 5%, and then nothing. So 9% a couple years back, and I mean, people are struggling, and any way we can get them more money, we got to figure it out. So Kyle, I'm not, like I said, I'm not fighting you on it or battling. We're just playing devil's advocate and talking out loud.
Idea.
It's like I said, I'm not mad about it. I mean, we can go either way as long as I get money. I don't care.
The one thing I want to say is I'm personally very unique. I love being unique. I take pride in being unique. And I think if we do this loyalty retention bonus, whatever you want to call it, we can put a sign on our door that says we have something special and unique that very few other people have. And I'm all about that, because everybody else is doing the same thing we're doing. They're given potentially straight raises with the money that they get from the state, and if they're doing a Vader, they're having similar conversations. But this is something that very few districts are doing, and I think we need to give it strong consideration with all of the different asterisks that we've discussed, the language, all of that. But I like being unique, and I want Brenham ISD to be unique.
That's a good point, Archer. And as for the wording, I mean, luckily we have very good lawyers that'll tell us exactly how we need to word. Yeah. And we got Chat GPT over there, Brooke. So, does anybody else have any questions? Are we feel pretty good about this?
Thank God y'all are here, and thank you so much for the work you've put into this. And as we think to the future too, there's nobody who's going to know what's going to happen in the future, but I just know that the people who are working on this, they realize that this is important, and we can't make mistakes at this point. We want to make it right. And so, and, you know, and Daryl, God bless you. And people like you, I know. And because he knows what, a lot of things that we don't know about what could happen in the future, how it could look, what it could be like, you know, what are some of the issues that we probably don't know about. And I've been in the school business a long time, but I've never done your job, so, and that's good too. Thank God for that. But
I think we'd be in trouble if that was.
I'm pretty sure.
Hey, I'm going to recap just real quick for people listening because we were having a lot of budget conversations in one conversation. So just to recap, and correct me if I make any missteps. So when we're talking about House Bill 2, outside of the 4 and the 8 pass-through, where it looked like we landed was adjusting the step raise for teachers to 30 for 30 years, looking at adjustments for 2,000 raise for teachers at 0, 1, 2, then the pass-through for the mandated benefits, and then 2.75 for everyone else. That pretty much locks in majority of what we were talking about from House Bill 2. The last half of this discussion we just had was about if we had additional revenue in the district. In our case, in terms of a Vader. Other districts, if y'all look at that sheet I gave you, have been doing that through their fund balance, their 0, 1, 2, and other things, which we know is not an option here in Brenham ISD. So that conversation will be at the 12th, the August 12th meeting, where we will adopt a 25-26 budget and hear the recommendation for strategic planning on what a potential additional things we could do.
Real quick, Daryl, just to throw another wrinkle, if we were to drop that to the 2,000 for the 0, 1, 2 teachers, it'll come out real close, but there's an opportunity to bump that to 3% for the all non-teaching staff.
Yes, I already made a note to go back and check on that.
Okay, yeah, because
When
again, kind of based on my rough calculations here, if you drop those teachers, it would be $82,000 after benefits, and it's like $46,000 to bump 2.75 to 3%. So again, if we can get to 3%, I know Raven would be happy about that with the HB2 funding for all non-teaching staff. I think everyone else on the board would support
Yes.
that, and then it does make the next conversation for additional compensation a little easier, and kind of where we go for the next steps after that. So,
I agree.
I was just going to say, I was going to reiterate, 3 sounds a heck of a lot better than 2.75, which is what
I
Clay
can-
just told me. I'm like, that does, I mean,
It doesn't only sound better, it is better, but
Yeah,
I would almost
absolutely.
I'd almost venture to say, well, if we can't get to 3, then I'd rather go to 1,500 for teachers and get to 3. I think the 3 should be a priority above going from 1 to 2. You know what I mean?
I actually agree with you because I think that would be, it's a lot broader for a lot more people.
Both ways.
Impacts-
Play
it
with it
impacts
and let's see
more
what we can
people,
do.
Yeah.
yeah, it does impact more people because you've
Yes.
got 37 teachers that are in that 0, 1, 2 category. I'm not saying they don't need to be touched, impacted by some adjustment, but 37 new teachers versus 800 other employees. It's not for all non-teaching staff.
Well,
so another 500 employees. Yeah, it impacts more people across the board. So.
If you look, you can get creative because a lot of these are 52,250. You know, that's their starting salary. So we don't. It doesn't have to be a solid number. We can tinker with it, to get there.
I wanna say one other thing, just kind of hedging the community a little bit. To be clear, we're kind of said it, but we're having 2 separate conversations. One of them is relatively hypothetical on the passage of a Vader. The other is not, with the money from the state that we're already getting. So on next Tuesday, on the 12th, we are voting, correct me if I'm wrong, voting on what we're going to do with the pot of money that we're already getting from the state. How we're going to divvy that out. And then we don't necessarily have to have a plan for the Vader, but we would like to. There's no voting on that, just discussion.
We're also on the 12th. We're going to vote if we're going to do a Vader or
Right,
not.
we're going to
Yeah.
vote on that, but we're not voting on how to use it, is what I'm saying.
We still
Correct.
have to have a budget.
Correct.
Well, I mean, that's
So-
how.
Right.
the budget. So
Yeah.
you have to have a budget showing if a Vader passes and the compensation manual if they pass, which is part of the reason.
Okay,
Yes.
right.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
Okay, right. Correct. I want that to be clear to the community. Sorry if I confuse anyone.
No, just again, very thankful that we're having this conversation. I feel like we can get to 3. Thank you for, again, looking very deeply at that. We've got some more conversations in here as a executive leadership team before we bring you a budget based on function. Remember, you adopt at the function level, so we'll continue to work with expenditures and comb through and try to reach that 3%. Okay.
Okay, is everybody good? All right, it is 1:50 with no further business before the board. This meeting is adjourned.